On the way down to the village from my windmill, you pass a farmhouse. It is a real Provençal farmer's house, with its red tiles, its wide expanse of irregularly placed windows, its lofty wind vane, and its pulley for hoisting the bundles of hay, brown wisps of which cling everywhere. Why did this house fill me with such a feeling of horror? Why did the sight of its large, closed gateway make my heart contract? I could not have said why, yet this house caused shivers to run down my spine. It looked too silent. No dogs barked as you passed, never the sound of voices from inside. But for the white window curtains and the smoking chimneys, you would have thought the place uninhabited. Yesterday, at the stroke of midday, I was returning from the village, and, to avoid the sun, I was walking close to the wall of the farm, in the shade of the trees. On the road in front of the farmhouse, some workmen were silently loading a cart with hay. The large door had been left open. As I passed, I glanced inside, and I saw at the back of the courtyard, with his elbows on a broad stone table and his head in his hands, a big, white-haired old man. I stopped. "Shh, it's the master," one of the men whispered to me. "He's been like that since the death of his son." Just then, a woman and a little boy dressed in black and carrying big gilt prayer books passed close to us and entered the farm. The man added, "The mistress and the younger son coming back from Mass. They go every day since the boy killed himself. Oh, monsieur, what an affliction. His father still wears the dead boy's clothes. Nobody can stop him wearing them. Get along there." The cart began to move off. Wishing to know more, I asked the driver if I could get up beside him, and it was up there, on top of the hay, that I learnt the whole of this heartbreaking story. His name was Jan. He was a fine country lad, 20 years old, open-faced, well-built, as gentle as a girl. Because of his good looks, the women used to follow him with their eyes, but he had eyes only for one of them, a girl from Arles, whom he had met one day beside the Lys in Arles. At first, everybody at the farm was not pleased. The girl was said to be flighty, and her parents were not local people. But Jan was determined to have his girl from Arles. He used to say, "I will die if she's not mine." The situation had to be accepted. It was agreed they should be married after the harvest. Well, one Sunday evening, the family were just finishing dinner in the courtyard. Then a man appears at the door, and in a trembling voice asks to speak to the farmer Estève by himself. Estève gets up and goes out onto the roadway. "Master," says the man, "you are marrying your son to a hussy who has been my mistress for 2 years. What I say I can prove. See these letters. Her parents know, and they had promised her to me, but ever since your son has kept pestering her, her fine ladyship and her parents don't want anything more to do with me. But I'd have thought, after what these letters show, she couldn't become the wife of another man." Estève looks at the letters. "That settles it," he says. "Come in and have a glass of muscatel." The man replies, "Thank you, but I am not thirsty, only full of sorrow." And he goes away. The father goes back in, his face betraying nothing. He takes his place again at the table, and the meal continues merrily. That evening, Estève and his son went out together into the fields. They stayed out a long time. When they came back, the mother was still waiting for them. "Wife," said the farmer, leading his son to her, "take him to you. He is very unhappy." Jan never mentioned the girl from Arles again. But he loved her still, more even since they had proved to him she had lain in the arms of another. Sometimes he would pass whole days sitting alone in a corner. Other times he would go out onto the land and do furiously by himself the work of 10 labourers. In the evening he would take the road to Arles and walk on until he saw the slender steeples of the town rising against the sunset. Then he would turn back. Never did he go any further. Seeing him like this, always sad and alone, the people at the farm did not know what to do. They began to dread some disaster. Once, during dinner, his mother looked at him, her eyes full of tears, and said, "All right, listen, Jan. If you still want her, you shall have her." His father flushed and looked down, overcome by the shame of it. Jan shook his head and went out. From that day, his attitude changed. He pretended to be always cheerful in order to reassure his parents. He was seen again at dances, in taverns, at bull brandings. His father kept saying, "He's got over it." The mother still had her forebodings and watched her boy more than ever. Jan slept with his younger brother quite near the silkworm rearing house. The poor old woman had made a bed for herself next to their room. The silkworms might need her in the night. Then came the feast of St. Eloi, patron of farmers. Great rejoicings at the farm. There was Chateauneuf for everybody, and mulled wine flowed like water. Fireworks followed, bonfires in the yard, and coloured lanterns hung on all the trees. Everybody danced the farandole until they dropped. Jan himself actually looked happy. He danced with his mother. The poor woman wept for joy. At midnight they went to bed. Everybody was ready to fall asleep on their feet, everybody except Jan. His younger brother told later that all night Jan lay sobbing. Yes, he was still taking it very badly, poor lad. Next day, at dawn, his mother heard somebody pass through her room, running. She knew at once something was wrong. "Jan, is that you?" Jan does not reply. He is already on the stairs. Quickly, the mother gets up. "Jan, where are you going?" He goes up to the loft. She follows him. "Jan, my boy, answer me. What are you doing?" She gropes for the latch, her old hands trembling. A window opening, a body falling onto the paving stones of the yard, and all is over. The poor boy had said to himself, "I love her too much. I'm going to go away from it all." Ah, what misery the human heart can bear! But there is one burden too heavy for it, to realize we cannot stop loving the woman we have come to despise. That morning, the people of the village wondered who was crying out so up at Estev's farm. There in the yard, in front of the dew-covered, blood-covered stone table, the mother, naked from her bed, was crying for her child, lying dead in her arms.